So I've come up with an interesting idea, and this mangled work here is part of the design. So this is my little electromechanical actuation plate, one of these things. And what I've done is I've used some pins to attach it to this wiring plates thing that I made. And when I first made it, I kind of made it a mistake. I made an accident. I had a little accident. So this is what I made. And the way it works is, this was my first design. I was meant to just hold these, basically just act as the bottom of any given switch body, of any given keyboard, whether it be a macro pad or a keyboard or whatnot. And I made it so that it would be very easy to run wires underneath and through. You see that space there? There's enough space there for, a bunch of wires. And it was meant to be flat. But then I realized as I was pulling off the printer, like, man, wow, this thing's actually really flexible. I could use that to my advantage. So I kind of redesigned it a little bit so that it's the exact opposite. You see that? And also a bit stronger. This one's way too floppy. So this is the, prototype number 2. And it's kind of interesting because this would work for something like a dactyl manuform. You see how it's, you can bend it like that, and it keeps the, the distances and shapes that you want. But just in case this is actually parametric, I can make that. The spaces between them are trivially easy to change. And this version that I made, I used a pin design that I'd made before. And obviously they're too long, and they also have a flat bottom. So these are the pins that you're supposed to use. Or, well, that was the plan anyway. And you just sort of shove them in the hole. And, press really hard, hammer them in, put them in a vise, whatever. Doesn't matter. So, yeah, I made a whole bunch of these now to test with. And that's what I did. And it's actually kind of awesome. Because once you got these hammered in there, and by the way, they do need to be hammered in there because that's a lot of bridging. I guess you could just glue it, or I could use some posts. Once I start wiring it tomorrow, I'll know if it works out. If these pins are teeny tiny, they might be too small. Right? I might need to come up with a better way to fasten each, the top to the bottom. And this is I think it's 4 millimeters tall. Obviously, that's parametric like everything else, but there is an extra 4 millimeters space in a given keyboard or macro pad would have, because you still need space underneath usually for the electronics. But I was just admitting, who am I kidding? I can't really save that much vertical space if I want the wires to be in there and still have the keyboard hot swappable, like this. This is from my macro pad, and you can just pull it right off and put it back on, and the macro pad should keep working. It's hot swappable. You can swap out the switches, put some different ones in there, try out some different stuff. And that's one of the cooler features of my switch design, and I didn't want to give that up by putting electronics inside of here, because it is nice. And overall, it shouldn't be too bad. Just an extra 4 millimeters. If you think about it, this wouldn't be the bottom of the plate. I guess it could be if you put the electronics upright or so on the sides. But it's not too bad. An extra 4 millimeters shouldn't be a big deal. I hope that doesn't upset anybody. I mean, we shall see. But it'll definitely be a lot easier to wire, and the real benefit to this method is I can wire it up, test it, and then put it inside of a keyboard or a macro pad or similar. And another thing too is this doesn't have to be its own separate thing. It could just be incorporated into a case. It doesn't have to be like this. But the reason why the pins go all the way through is so that you can, just put some holes in a case and then just put the pins in that way. That way you don't need to have I don't have to do a fancy sliding mechanism or anything. I could just put the pins in. You can actually hammer them in from the other side. It doesn't matter. As long as they go through enough to make contact with everything necessary, they'll hold strong. And I mean ridiculously strong. Actually, the reason why this one's all mangled is because I made a mistake putting the pins in first time when I tried to get it out. And it did come out. It came out just fine, but it was really strong. It was really holding on strong. So that's why it's a little messed up. But obviously, if you had to rehammer it back together, that would work because it would just flatten itself out when the pins were all back in there. So I must say it's working out so far, but we'll see once I start trying to wire it. And I'm going to try and come up with something a little bit better so I can have like a bus bar for all of the top 18 gauge steel wire. Just have like a bus bar because they're all going to go to ground. I'm sure there's some better way I can do that than just having a bunch of soldering points. We'll see. So that's what I've been working on.